So today we are doing a synastry reading for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. We're going to take a look at their charts side by side and do like a synastry of them. And then we're also going to add the transits for the day of the royal wedding. Actually, I'm going to read their charts individually first. Really. So this is Prince Harry's chart that we're looking at here. He is a rising Capricorn. And the main thing I want to focus on for his chart is this interception in the first house and seventh house. And that is the house axis that deals with his sense of self and his identity and his whole, you know, who he sees when he looks in the mirror, how he identifies with himself, and as well as how he relates with others. His seventh house is the house of relationships. That includes marriages. So very much related to his relationship with Ms. Meghan Markle, Ms. Meghan Markle, I should say. And so the fact that Leo is intercepted in the seventh house, Leo is literally the sign that rules royalty and the crown. So it's interesting to see this Leo intercepted in the seventh house, where he literally had his potential ability to score this crown intercepted in his relationship. And she just happens to be a Leo sun. So let's pull her chart up. And this is Meghan's chart around the outside. And here's her Leo sun. That is also her, as you know, this idea of her as a royal, of a princess. She married into this royal family. Yeah, she had, she married into this royal family, and then her crown got intercepted, and they ended up leaving the royal, and that Leo is intercepted here by this entire Virgo stellium of Harry's, but also her Virgo. I don't know if this is classifies as a stellium, since there's only really one planet, but she also has a Virgo Ceres and Venus. So that's really the biggest thing I wanted to touch on in Harry's. When we look at Meghan's laid over his, you'll also notice that her Mars, which is in Cancer and 11 degrees of Cancer, is perfectly on his descendant. So they be fucking. Mars rules sex, Mars rules heat and passion, and it's the masculine giving energy, where Venus is the feminine receiving energy, and that connection. So it's definitely interesting to see her Mars right on his descendant. They definitely have good synastry. She's also a rising Cancer, so if we switch and put her chart in the middle, now we're looking at her chart as a rising Cancer, and his Capricorn ascendant falls right into her sixth house in Placidus, but then whole sign, it's in the seventh house. So again, this is like when they say the ideal partner synastry, like their seventh house is your first house and vice versa. Meghan and Harry definitely have that going on, where they kind of mirror each other in terms of the houses that they're experiencing. So yeah, I have a bunch of aspects between their chart that I want to talk about. Let's see, he also has his Pallas, which is the asteroid likened or associated with Athena. There's also another asteroid named Athena, but Pallas and Athena are likened together as like the same goddess archetype. And basically he has this in 11 degrees of Pisces, which is in a perfect trine with her 11-degree Cancer Mars. That's trine his own descendant here. And Pallas is, and Athena, this archetype, it's the goddess of warfare, and specifically psychological warfare. She's very psychologically one step ahead of her opponent, and there's this energy of psychological warfare from Harry, and maybe not him necessarily, but like his family and stuff. This experience of dating Prince Harry, this psychological warfare is trying her Mars, and is just feeding so much emotional trauma into her that is obviously very intentionally crafted by the motherfucking firm, as they call it, which we'll talk more about. But degrees per, yeah, exactly. That's that master degree. It's the Aquarius degree, the 11th degree. It has a lot to do with kind of feeling restricted, feeling boxed in, and learning how to break out of that box. And so that's definitely the lesson that this 11-degree placement and synastry is teaching Meghan for sure. Like she had to learn how to defy these authoritative figures. And like she wasn't just defying any authoritative figure, she was defying the motherfucking crown of England. Like that is the, you know, that's them. That's the guy. So Harry, who is on the outside right now, Harry has a 21-degree Taurus moon. Now, this is also, um, conjunct his Ceres and his North Node in 29 degrees of Taurus. The moon is the planet or the body that is associated with motherhood and maternity and nurturing and coddling, and that especially like we all saw very publicly his mother son bond, like how strong that was, and how his connection to his mother is very much represented by this moon, and he has that exalted Taurus moon where it's just a very gentle, loving energy, very like grounded, and just you could tell you like the care that he received as a child was very exalted, like in with that Taurus moon. But what I want to talk about is this Ceres. Ceres is the asteroid that is, a liken to, it's the Roman goddess, but it's a liken to the Greek goddess Demeter, and who is the goddess of harvest. And Ceres is the goddess of harvest. She rules over specifically cereal grain, like is named for Ceres, this goddess. So yeah, but specifically a relation to Demeter, the Greek goddess, a liken to this asteroid. It's a story of a mother who like goes through hell. I don't want to go too deep into the mythology because I have a lot to talk about, but Demeter's mythology has to do with having her child taken away from her and having to go through hell in order to get her daughter back, and still only getting her back like halfway, is the gist of that. So there's kind of this loss of a child energy, or like mothers being separated from child energy, and or being withheld from their child temporarily, just while some other person in power keeps them for half the time, is the story here. And you really see that with Ceres conjunct moon, like that story is playing out for him and his mother. And let's see, do I want to talk about this right now? Oh, let's talk about her Chiron, which is right there. She has Chiron in 22 degrees of Taurus, which is, Chiron is the wounded healer. And it's this like wound that we can't heal in ourselves. We can heal other people, but then when it comes to healing ourselves, we are left with these scars. And there's a lot of pain and wounds, and a lot of insecurities are connected to Chiron through that reason. It's not just that, it goes way deeper than that, but I'm going to keep it to that for now. Chiron is also the kind of key to our power. It's literally shaped like a key. And so, it's this Chiron teaches us that weakness of ours can actually be our biggest strength. And you really see Meghan kind of being the key to Harry kind of unlocking some of the like repressed mommy issues that he has. I'll say it.
My mum used that on her lips. You want me to put that on my todger? The minute I opened it, the smell transported me through time. I felt as if my mother was right there in the room. Then I took a smidge and applied it down there.
That's what's happening with that Chiron synastry there. But let's see. Oh, he also has a 22-degree Virgo sun, so that's perfectly trying this Chiron, and his own moon. He has this Virgo placement here, and then she, like I said earlier, she has a Virgo Venus and Ceres, so that Virgo Ceres is feeding into his sun, and it's this kind of like Oedipal complex where like he sees his mother in Meghan a lot, and it plays the. I'm sure, like those girlfriends and wives that are like they act like their partner's mom. Like there's definitely that energy here at a pull complex for sure. Let's see. Oh, okay, so while we're on this 22-degree Virgo sun, the sun is also the ruler of Leo. The sun, out of the seven traditional planets, is the king, is the one on the throne, the one on the spotlight and the visibility. And especially when you're looking at celebrities and people who are extremely visible, like these two, the sun is really going to represent that celebrity. And so he has 22-degree Virgo sun. She has a 22-degree Neptune in Sagittarius, another mutable sign. So this is a square between the two of them, this sun and this Neptune. And it's really like, it's kind of sad how this played out because Neptune is your fantasies, right? It's the things that you dream about. It's the way that you it's fantasizing about becoming the princess in the castle. It's very much Cinderella story, this like um fairy tale energy. And so like becoming a princess is totally Neptune territory, and like Venus exalted in Pisces vibes of like this just a princess in her little castle and her bubble. And so this kind of fantasization of the crown that she had, yeah, you know, got sideswiped by the actual reality of the crown, which is this Virgo sun. It's a fucking job, you know, it's responsibilities. And especially like William and Kate get a lot of the better perks of it because he's actually like in line to be king and he has kids, so the succession is set to go down that branch of the family tree, whereas Harry and Meghan are on like helper duty. You know what I mean? The responsibilities that the crown gives them aren't as glamorous as the other two, and it's definitely like, let's just say her fantasies got fucking T-boned by this the reality of especially the 22 degree being a Capricorn degree. It's a Saturn degree. It's known as the assassination degree. So I'm glad she got the fuck out of there before she ended up like Diana. It's kill or be killed. And she was like, I'm gonna kill myself. And it's not an emotional reaction. She was undergoing so much fucking abuse, you know, in such oppressive, horribly racist systems where she was like, I literally don't want to be alive anymore. And that's why they left the royal family. And that's also like her Neptune square this sun. It kind of goes reverse where she had this like romanticized version of the crown in her head, and like once that bubble popped, because she has Neptune retrograde, so pop goes that fucking bubble, and then that squared his sun and fucking knocked his crown off, you know, virtually. So that's something interesting that I see here. Let's talk, okay, while we're on this subject of Virgo still, he has a Virgo Juno in 3 degrees. That's right where her Virgo series is. So I talked a little bit about series and the mommy issues. Juno is, you know, it's the Roman goddess of marriage, and it's likened to the Greek goddess Hera. It's the wife of Zeus, and so it's this. Even though Zeus was a dog, he is known to have pretty much have sex with everyone. He always came home to his loving wife. And so that is this Juno energy. I'm not saying that Harry does that. I'm just saying Juno is the asteroid that really represents that like committed partner that you come home to. It's the wifey. So that is also conjunct Vesta. And Vesta is so like clearly exhibited within Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle has a 0-degree Vesta in Libra, which is on what's known as the Aries point. That is 0 degrees of all 4 cardinal signs. So it's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn is the Aries point. So she has an Aries point Vesta in 0 degrees. Which then sets up Vesta in the 0 degree of Libra, sets up a really, really beautiful expression of Libra for her. It's a critical degree, 0 degrees. It has unlimited potential. You know, that she has her full choice and control over how the expression of that sign is going to be expressed through Vesta. And so even though she has Juno and Pluto up in these higher degrees of Libra, which are much more karmic and like fated, heavier energies that are more out of her control than these lower degrees, and obviously we see that with some of her Plutonian traumatic expressions that her and her partner endured with at the hands of the crown is what I'm specifically talking about. And the silencing, all of that stuff. That's this heavier stuff that she doesn't have control over.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
Whereas these lower degrees, especially this 0 degree Vesta, Vesta is the asteroid named for the goddess of the virgin flame. And she is it's a really complicated archetype, and this is not a video on Vesta, but it's basically the maiden who kept the flame going in the temple dedicated to the goddess, and it very much is the goddess of home and hearth and keeping a tight ship, but also of service. And we really see Meghan Markle playing this Vesta archetype out, not in the form, she's not cleaning no fucking dishes and towels, she's a princess. She's the princess expression of Vesta, where she's very much like for the people, and you see her doing so much philanthropic work and just in this very Libra nature of just being this beautiful, harmonious woman who is, fighting for justice in a very poised, peaceful, and elegant way. It's such a beautiful Libra expression. And what it does is it just lays an immaculate groundwork for the rest of her Libra stellium, because look at what she has going on here. She has a Libra moon in 4 degrees, then 5 degrees and 6 degrees are Saturn and Jupiter. So she has a great conjunction. The 2 great planets, Saturn and Jupiter. A lot of you might remember we had one back in 2020 in Aquarius, and it was on the solstice. It's known as the maker of kings. This is such a royal placement. It is the conjunction that talks about, being handed off the torch as far as societal power and the ability to make systemic changes for the better or for the worse if you're a fucking evil dictator. But in her case, you can very clearly see her. This 0 degree Vesta lays this truly like good natured and passionate, this fire that keeps burning groundwork for her to really just take this throne. She's so fucking destined to be a global ruler, and not necessarily like, it doesn't have to be the royal family of England, you know what I mean? It's just this grand energy of someone who makes a serious impact and is given this kind of level of authority and influence in society that just changes society forever. And while we're on this subject of incredible power of Meghan Markle's chart, I also really want to talk about, she is an eclipse baby. She was born right after an eclipse. She has this Leo sun in 11 degrees and a Leo North node as well, which means that there was just a new moon solar eclipse like a week before she was born, and there was a full moon lunar eclipse in the Aquarius full moon like a couple weeks after she was born. So she was born in that 2-week window in between eclipse season, which makes her even more of a force to be reckoned with. Just this unstoppable energy. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Ariana. Especially with the moon there, the moon is just highlighting and amplifying this great conjunction, and it's been activated by the lunar nodes. It's actually been a lot of astrologers, especially traditional astrologers and Vedic astrologers, they really view this eclipse period as the moon being wounded or like sick or drained of energy. And you might see that where like this crown was taken away from her. God only knows what they did to her to make her want to end her own life. Enough for Harry, who's like, the second branch to get the crown, to say, peace out, I'm out of here. It must have been horrible. And that could be this moon, this eclipse kind of impacted moon, but I will say, when the solar eclipse happens first, I sometimes think that is almost the moon, eclipsing our sunlight. So we are the weakened ones in this 2C. Whereas if the lunar eclipse comes first, then the moon is drained for 2 weeks. That's my personal opinion. But I'm not an expert in the condition of the moon in eclipses. That's my experiences that I've observed as far as the difference between if the lunar or solar eclipse comes first. Okay, so going back to this Virgo placement over here, Harry, who is on the outside right now, he also has a 3-degree Jupiter in Capricorn, which is trine this. So again, this series trine his Jupiter. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces and represents the like repressed subconscious emotions that we've hidden away and numbed away. Neptune being that kind of numbing agent, or the veil that hides those uncomfortable mommy issues away on the back burner. So this series trine Jupiter, very much like, again, she's awakening these sub repressed emotions within him. Oh, so touching back on this 0-degree Vesta, this 0-degree Vesta is opposite his Lilith, which is in 1 degree of Aries. Lilith is the seductress, it's the temptress, it is the kind of the snake in the Garden of Eden that's tempting you to bite the forbidden fruit. And I guess like for him, it's very much like Vesta being this like maiden type, like a commoner, and his for him it's like this seductress of who is this non-royal, she's American even. So like his brother already did the commoner thing, he's one-upping her by going with an American commoner who's from LA, who like has like bikini shots and stuff posted. It was very much Lilithian, where the crown like shamed him, and there was a lot of shame induced in him about like this relationship. And this obviously had to do with like her race as well. It was very racially motivated, and so there's a lot of that too, where like Lilith is the asteroid that talks about how the societal structures and systems oppress women and create these violent, abusive, oppressive systems. And it doesn't explicitly like say anything about race, but it has to do with oppression, and especially like female oppression. So the plight of a Black woman who's marrying this white man within the crown of the English royal family, like that's totally Vesta in 0 degrees of Libra, opposite this Lilith here in Aries. But again, her Mars is the ruler of Aries, is on her descendant, or is on his descendant. So the sex trumps all. Like it's hot, it's spicy, he makes her feel alive, she makes him feel alive, and it is just like it was worth ditching the crown for. Like that is some good. So that's Lilith opposite Vesta. While we're on the topic of Lilith, I want to look at her Lilith, because her Lilith is conjunct Uranus. So again, this idea of her being this like not what this crown expected, not what society wanted as far as a traditional princess. That's conjunct her Uranus. So for her, like to marry into the crown like this was quite literally an act of rebellion, and it very much caused chaos within the royal family, within the press. She stirred the pot, she stirred the tabloids, and that's really very clear here with this 24 and 26 degree conjunction. The midpoint of 25 degrees is right where his series is opposite. So again, her Lilith, her sex appeal, especially Scorpio, is really like Lilith's home sign. It's this very magnetic, sexually seductive, taboo as well energy, where it's like this kind of forbidden fruit. And Lilith opposite Ceres, where her Ceres trine his Jupiter means she's activating so many repressed emotions about his mother, and like he sees his mother in her, but then he still like wants to fuck her, and that's probably a weird ass situation to be in. But it's very clearly laid out here again. So I want to talk a little bit more about this kind of difficulties that they experienced with the crown. Okay, so she has this Leo sun, domiciled Leo sun, very royal energy. She's also a rising Cancer. Leo and Cancer are the two signs that rule royalty. They're ruled by the sun and the moon, or the two luminaries, the light bulbs in the sky, and or the two major large ones. Some cultures refer to the seven planets all as luminaries. Others, like Hellenistic tradition, refer to the sun and the moon as the luminaries. But regardless, they're the two, signs that talk about royalty. Leo is the king and Cancer is the queen. So she has such royal energy with this rising Cancer, this Leo sign in the first house, especially with this great conjunction, it's very much destined for a crown. But then this 11-degree sun is being squared by Prince Harry's 12-degree Saturn in Scorpio. And, Saturn is okay, so the crown itself and the king is Leo and the sun, whereas Saturn is the controlling entity that dictates and controls and limits what the royal family can do. So most people think that the royal family are in charge. They are not. They answer to what they refer to as the firm. It's literally a company, a corporation that controls everything of the royal family. Is their press, their outfits, their scripts, their do's, their don'ts, their this, their that, their responsibilities. That is Saturn, is the firm. And so we have the firm squaring her Leo sun, just fucking with her and intentionally, like she's this star, she's shining bright. She is really, for a second there, she was almost like changing the perception of the royal family as not as racist and horrible and evil as they actually are. And then they went and fucked that up and went ahead and were actually as horrible and evil and racist as they actually are, where the synastry has a lot of really good synastry that we've talked about, but this is one of the harder aspects that is just like, oof, Saturn square sun, like that is this firm doing everything they can to stop her from shining. And then it's that Saturn in 12 degrees of Scorpio is also trine her 11-degree Mars in Cancer, in the water signs. Now Mars is in its fall in Cancer, and this is because it talks about pain and difficult experiences that hurt us and penetrate us and cut us, but it's ruled by the moon, so they're very emotionally cutting. It doesn't talk about physical injuries. It's not like like getting a cut and scraping your knee. It's like somebody like stabbing you in the heart and just like tearing your heart out, like really trying to hit that emotional spot. It's a low blow kind of vibe that is in a trine with this Saturn. So it's very, the square is a hard aspect. It's hard on her happiness. It's definitely hitting her, knocking her crown off. It's knocking the smile off of her face. That's Saturn square the sun. But then Saturn trine Mars, it's a very easy energy that flows easily. So this oppression very easily hurts her and wounds her and triggers her emotionally, and that's the trine with Saturn playing out. So just that's like a really clear example how one planet and trine, even though Jupiter is associated with the trine and it's considered it's like a good aspect, but not if it's malefics. If it's Saturn and Mars in that trine, then it's just easier for someone to oppress you and hurt you. It's the energy flows easier. If the energy is malefic, it's not necessarily a good aspect to have. So this is an example of that. Okay, we're gonna look at Meghan's chart on the day of the wedding and then Harry's chart on the day of the wedding. That's what we're gonna do now. So this is the royal wedding. Okay, so this is Meghan Markle's chart on the inside. She's the rising Cancer here. And then the outside of the chart is the transits the day of their wedding, their royal wedding on May 19th of 2018. So she's this rising Cancer. The first thing that I noticed is that at 12 noon, which is the moment that they started the ceremony, the moon was in Cancer and 22 degrees of Cancer. So only a couple degrees off from her ascendant and aspecting all of these 22-degree placements that we've talked about already. So really interesting and beautiful. Just that domicile moon of like a princess getting her tiara, you know, a queen getting her crown, even though she's like not the queen, but you know what I mean. Okay, so it was also her nodal return. The North Node was in 8 degrees of Leo, and she has her North Node in 1 degree of Leo. So she was very much stepping forward into that kind of fated role for her. And again, remember, she's an eclipse baby. She was born in between 2 eclipses. So the lunar nodes and this kind of these fated moments where she's jumping through this kind of portal into the next chapter of her life, it's even more relevant for her because she like that's like her purpose is very much related to these nodes. It's like a nice little thing. It's this moment where you're like, I'm in alignment. You know, it's a confirmation that you're on the right path, and the kind of momentum that your soul had when you were born, the kind of direction that your soul desired when you entered this world is kind of you're in that same direction, and it feels very aligned, and the momentum's in the right direction as far as what your soul has yet to experience, you know. So love the nodal return for her. She also has Mercury and Pallas and her Leo sun all there on this node. So all of these parts of her are kind of very much involved in that nodal return there. She also has, obviously, you know, if this 1 degree Leo North node, she has a 1 degree Aquarius South node, and Mars was transiting her South node in Aquarius. So Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. So this is the in the traditional rulership. Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. And so that is the violence, that is the abuse, that is the emotional manipulation that she basically put under by the fucking royal family. And you see this Mars actually pulls her back into her South Node or into her past as a commoner. She eventually left the crown and then went back into the Aquarius energy of the everyday man. You know, the everyday civilian is the energy of Aquarius, humanity. You know, the collective, the group. She's just one of us again. Even though she's famous, she very much does not have the protection and all that stuff of the crown too, which is something I might talk about later if I have time to. But it's very interesting that Mars was right on the South Node. So even though, you know, she has all these Leo placements and it was her nodal return, and you know, she was destined to become this like pseudo princess or whatever, the American princess and all of this, the global princess too. Like they went on that global tour. Everyone around the world fucking loves her, and so she's meant to have that kind of light shining on her and that spotlight and that essence of a crown. But ultimately Mars, the pain and trauma and fucking abuse that she endured, it was too much, and it pushed her back into this South Node of you know, the commoner, because Mars also moves pretty slowly. So to have the moon or Mercury or even Venus or the sun on the nodes, like that happens twice a year or whatever, or in the moon it happens like monthly, whereas Mars takes like 3 years to go around the wheel. So Mars hitting the node, like that doesn't happen every day. It's very much very fated day for sure. Moments of fate. While we're on the nodes, 8 degree nodes are aspecting her great conjunction. You know, she has this 4, 5, 6 degree moon, Saturn, Jupiter in Libra, which I talked about a little bit already. And those nodes are just further, you know, activating this global presence of hers. You know, her South Node, or the transiting South Node that day, excuse me, being trine Jupiter, just had a lot to do with this like very big global affair. You know, it was, everyone watched it around the world. Also, the day of the wedding, there was an 8 degree Saturn in Capricorn domiciled. So this, again, Saturn is the firm. Saturn is really the structure and rules of the royal family and the kind of organization and corporation that runs that operation fully, as well as the militarized aspect of it, the security aspect of it. And so this 8th degree Capricorn placement is square her great conjunction. And you very much see, this Jupiter Saturn moon as Meghan Markle is being handed the torch. She's being handed this crown. She's being initiated into this role of like a global leader, of somebody who is changing society on incredibly large levels. And the traditional crown, this Capricorn Saturn, the domiciled transiting Saturn, does not like that. She has an exalted Saturn. Saturn is exalted in Libra, and that is very much somebody who is being granted authority and this kind of leadership role, this boss role of ruler that Saturn kind of signifies, but in Libra meaning a ruler who is just, someone who is fair, someone who weighs out all of the information and makes sure that things are being done correctly. And so I mean, Meghan Markle has been probably the most vocal out of anybody against the crown and against these oppressive systems, and fighting towards justice in a way that is so admired and revered by so many. She's such a good example of Saturn exalted in Libra. I will say that's a place when you have to be careful with people because they're very convincing and charming. Saturn exalted in Libra is like, oh, don't you want to do this thing for me for free? It would be so lovely of you. And then like it's like very sweet talk energy. But for her, we see her really sweet talking global leaders and sweet talking her way into like rooms where people actually have power. Okay, while we're in this Libra, let's talk about her Pluto. She has this 21-degree Libra Pluto, which I briefly mentioned. The day of the wedding was a 21-degree Pluto as well. Perfect square on her Pluto. So we talked about Mars on her node as the traditional ruler of Scorpio, and that's more of the like personal attacks. That's probably like the rude things that people said to her, the ways that she felt personally attacked and violated. Whereas Pluto is a much more, it's the quote higher octave of Mars, and it's like a generational placement in the birth chart. And so Pluto talks, it's much more large scale level of like abuse, and it's also, Pluto's also referred to as the like chthonic expression of Saturn in traditional mythology sects. And so there's also this element of like institutional abuse. It's institutionalized abuse that of a system, as opposed to like personal beef that she had with like royal chicks who were like, I was gonna marry Harry. Pluto is more of the rules and especially the unwritten rules of that are racist, hearing comments about her skin tone and stuff. That's more of this like the whispers of Pluto being shady and institutionally fucked up. So yeah, Pluto square her natal Pluto, which is in Libra. This is just a trauma from her relationships, trauma within her relationships, trauma related to her desire to bring justice.
I've advocated for so long for women to use their voice, and then I was silent.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
The latter.
Getting a negative reaction. Pluto is, Scorpio, and is the reaction. Aries, ruled by Mars, is the one who throws the first punch. Scorpionic energy, Pluto energy, is how you react to something, and it's very much getting this negative reaction from your justice warrior energy with this great conjunction. And again, this it could further be emphasized by this moon if it's in a poor condition because of the eclipse season. Right, this is Prince Harry's chart on the inside. He's a rising Capricorn, which we touched on. Remember, he has this interception, this is Mars in South Node, this Leo intercepted in his 7th house. Very much this North Node, his fate as king with his beautiful queen, or not queen, a beautiful wife, Ms. Markle, that fate was intercepted. This North Node Leo intercepted by Virgo, his Virgo sun, and Virgo Mercury, Virgo Vesta, Virgo Juno. So Juno's the wife, the spouse. Vesta is this, very attentive and heartwarming kind of archetype that Meghan Markle has with her 0-degree Vesta. Mercury in Virgo specifically, Mercury is domiciled in Virgo. It's also exalted in Virgo, double dignity, awesome place, the best placement for you to have Mercury. And this is the energy of communication. This is, it's about the things that people said and about reviewing those words. It's the second expression of Mercury. Gemini is so you're just saying what fucking comes to your head. It's just the words that came out. Virgo is the more refined expression of Mercury, and it talks about making sure all the details are right, going through documents, going through messages, going through and thinking through your thoughts, making sure that you have mental clarity about the situation. And so he thought long and hard about this. He went through her concerns. He went through the evidence and the facts of the situation, and when he thought clearly, that's this 22-degree sun making that final executive decision of kill or be killed. I either have to kill my relationship with the royal family, or the royal family is going to kill my relationship with Meghan. That's what that is. And he killed it. He took that 22-degree initiative of, I'm going to fucking assassinate my title as prince to save my own wife's life. Pretty crazy shit. So that's his little interception playing out here. Okay, where's my paper on this? Oh, here. Also, the moment of the ceremony, that 22-degree Cancer moon that I kind of already talked about, was perfectly sextile his sun. So again, this is very much like him as the groom, and the moon as the bride. The bride of the sun is a nickname of the moon, and having the sun and his own natal sun and the transiting moon in a sextile, or the aspect associated with Venus and harmony and marriage and all that stuff, it's a really nice transit for the exact moment of the ceremony. He also has a 21-degree Taurus moon, so that was also in a sextile, with his natal placements in their own trine. I want to talk a little bit about his Gemini Chiron. Now, I talked about Chiron and Chiron's really important role that it plays in being able to heal wounds that we never thought we could. We saw Meghan's Chiron synastry with him, with her Taurus Chiron, but his Chiron in 8 degrees of Gemini was perfectly aspecting the nodes. It's in a trine with this 8-degree Aquarius South node, and in a sextile with the Leo North node. So again, this Chiron, where all of these wounds that he thought he could never heal, Meghan came along to heal them, and this wedding day was really like a day of locking that in, or unlocking the kind of healed versions of themselves in this really beautiful ceremony of matrimony. So let's look now. This is actually the first things that I saw. I can't believe I am talking about it so late in this reading, but Harry has a 17-degree Scorpio midheaven, and Jupiter was in 17 degrees of Scorpio when they got married. So Jupiter was on his midheaven. The midheaven is your highest goals and aspirations. It is your long last. It's also, the midheaven is the highest point in the sky at the moment you're born. And so it's the highest point that the sun goes to, during the afternoon or whatever. And it represents it really is that throne. It's the tip top of the sky, and the highest point of visibility and success. It also talks about the impact that we leave. It's the cusp of the 10th house in Placidus mode, and it talks about the long-lasting impact that we leave, our reputation, our legacy, and it's tied to like the family name. So him as a Windsor, the 10th house cusp, and it's very relevant for him. So it makes total sense that Jupiter's on that midheaven with the day that there's this huge international obsession with him, you know, and his wife. Jupiter again is the planet that rules all things international. So this kind of very global affair makes perfect sense that Jupiter's on his midheaven for that day. Oh, okay. So possibly one of the most important transits for this day. So Prince Harry has Pluto in 0 degrees of Scorpio. This is a critical degree. I talked a little bit about this with Meghan's Vesta, which is in 0 of Libra, but his is 0 of Scorpio, and Pluto is domiciled in Scorpio. It's the ruler of Scorpio in modern astrology. And, you know, there's a lot of complicated meanings for what Pluto and Scorpio means, but the one that I want to focus on here has to do specifically with family, karma, karmic bloodline, karmic stuff, which I just kind of mentioned, and specifically family, like generational trauma is really what I want to talk about. You know, Cancer is the water sign that rules the roots and our ancestors and, you know, family history. It's specifically the cardinal sign. So it talks about growing roots, making your roots go down into the soil in order to give yourself a sturdy foundation, a stable foundation, and that is Capricorn. That's the Capricorn Cancer axis. The roots being the foundation of the tree, which is Capricorn, the family tree. So that's Cancer, is the cardinal expression of that, the action of growing roots, planting roots, creating a home, having a family. We all know there's a lot of fucking action involved in having kids. So that's the cardinal expression of that. Whereas Scorpio is the fixed water sign, and it talks about roots that are fixed in place. It's roots that have been, it's like a plant that is root bound. It is, and specifically, you know, Pluto is the planet that rules death and rot. So you can view Pluto in Scorpio like root rot, rotten family roots, rotten, and I don't mean like necessarily like evil, even though in this case, like, he damn straight has evil family roots. I mean, the most oppressive family, he has some rotten family roots, like really horrible generational trauma that, you know, and generational, like, ancestral karma that his family is just, oh God, you know. And so that's this Pluto in Scorpio in 0 degrees. The thing that Pluto and Scorpio generation is responsible for is removing and excavating the rotten roots. You know, the same way that if you have a plant that has rotting roots, you have to cut the roots out. You have to remove them so that the whole tree doesn't die. Pluto and Scorpio generation, everyone that has this placement is responsible for taking and removing the rot and the toxic cycles that their family has been trapped in for generations, and changing it. And so that's why a lot of people, anyone born from 1984 through, you know, 1995, 94, 95, that whole generation is all feeling so much generational trauma, breaking so many generational curses. Pluto rules curses. You know, this is a very special generation to break these generational curses, that Pluto and Scorpio generation. So he has that in 0 degrees, the critical degree. He has the full potential to do with that energy as he chooses. He is not sentenced to deal with heavy karmic fated bullshit as a result of his generational ancestral karma, because then his Pluto would be in the higher degrees. Instead, his Pluto is in that 1st degree of the sign where he has full control and choice over how he wants to deal with and handle his toxic family roots. And you see him take that control and make the conscious decision to remove himself from the fucking royal family. He said, this shit is toxic and I'm going to make the choice to leave. And that is foreshadowed by the transit the day of his wedding, because this 0-degree Pluto, let me put the aspects on. That 0-degree Pluto is perfectly opposite 0-degree Uranus that was transiting that day. So Uranus had just entered Taurus in 0 degrees, perfectly opposite his 0-degree Pluto. Taurus, opposite Pluto, is the sign that rules tradition. It's the fixed earth sign. So it's about, the traditional systems that run the economy, like the banking system that obviously England is heavily fucking involved in. So, but also just general family tradition. Everything from like the cake at the wedding was always a fruit cake. Every royal wedding always had a fruit cake, and they had some like, Rosenblatt, like multi split tier, like it was just a cake, but it shocked, it had everyone's timbers being fucking shivered. And that is Uranus here, causing a stir, creating a little chaos, breaking the mold. And specifically Uranus, that rebel energy in Taurus, the sign that rules tradition, is breaking from tradition. And we really see that with this opposition here. So very, very important, critical transit for the day of that wedding. And I wouldn't advise a Pluto-Uranus opposition unless you plan on breaking free from your whole fucking family and causing a stir while you do it. Which in some cases like this, that's what needs to happen. So, it really all depends on what you need and what you are looking to gain from your wedding, And this is like what I would tell clients. Like, there's certain transits that don't really work for the ideal traditional wedding, and then there's some that I'm like, you want to cause a stir? You want to fuck everyone's traditions up? Let's do it. This is the fucking transit for it. So yeah, and I think I already kind of talked a little bit about. Let me put this back. I already talked a little bit about, the Taurus aspects with Pluto. So his 21-degree Taurus moon, again, his natural emotional state, the way that he is processing emotions, as well as these whole mommy issues that I talked about, the motherhood themes, where he's like seeing a reflection of his mother. Again, this is perfectly trine the 21-degree Pluto from that day, which is also conjunct Lilith. Very significant transit as well there. And that ties into her 21-degree Pluto square. And so this is part of like the in conjunction energy where, let me pull her chart back on here. So her 21-degree Pluto in Libra is aspecting his 21-degree moon, but they're not in the same sign or they're not in the same element or the same mode. So they're not really interacting in a meaningful way, even though like her trauma, he's feeling it emotionally, but he's just physically stuck, fixed earth. And she's like, hearing things, hearing he said, she said, and just weighing things back and forth and moving the information around while he is kind of has his hands tied. That's the energy of that aspect there. So, yeah, I think that is just about everything for this. That's all that I have written down. One more thing that's just a comment. The day of the wedding, Venus was in 29 degrees of Gemini. So 29 degrees is the final degree of the sign. It is very, very fated. It is known as it's called the anaretic degree, and it's like this degree of infamy. It's intense attention, usually negative. So very controversial wedding. Like I said, broke from a lot of traditions and all that stuff. And Venus is the ruler of this Uranus here, with Uranus being in Taurus. So a very anaretic, controversial Venus loves nothing more than to stir the pot. And she definitely did that day.